Thank you.
Please, Faisal.
How are you? Hello, Faisal. Good afternoon. Well, it's been a very, very busy first day for me here at the Foreign Office, and it began really with a big speech to about 700 of our staff. And I set out what I think that we need to be doing and what we need to be focusing on, and that is reshaping Britain's global profile and identity as a great global player. And on Europe, clearly we have to give effect to the will of the people in the referendum, but that does not mean in any sense leaving Europe. There's a massive difference between leaving the EU and our relations with Europe, which, if anything, I think are going to be intensified and built up at an intergovernmental level. And I was very pleased to receive a phone call from Secretary Kerry of the United States, who totally agreed with that analysis. And his view was that post-Brexit and after the negotiations, what he really wants to see, and I think this is the right thing for the UK, is more Britain abroad, a greater global profile. And I think we now have the opportunity to achieve that. So overall, it's been a very exciting day.
So, Foreign Secretary Johnson, diplomacy is about personal relationships. I mean, you've said in the past you've compared a likely the presidential candidate to a sadistic nurse in a mental hospital. We know what was said about President Obama and his ancestral heritage. And today, the French Foreign Secretary has said you've told a lot of lies in the campaign. The German Foreign Secretary has said some of the stuff you've done is outrageous and irresponsible.
Well, after a vote like the referendum result on June the 23rd, it is inevitable that there's going to be a certain amount of plaster coming off the ceiling in the chancelleries of Europe. It wasn't the result that they were expecting, and clearly they're making their views known in a frank and free way. I have to say that the gentleman that you mentioned, the French Foreign Minister, in fact, has sent me a charming letter just a couple of hours ago, saying how much he looked forward to working together and to deepening Anglo-French cooperation on all sorts of areas, and that is what we want to achieve. And here in the Foreign Office, we have such incredible skills, such talent, and I'm absolutely certain that we have the people here who are going to be able to forge that global identity for Britain.
And Foreign Secretary, can you clarify what the role of this organisation will be once some section of its functions is carved off into David Davis's department? And are you still lobbying to leave the single market?
It's very important that people should realise when you leave Heathrow, when you leave Dover, a British citizen is basically the responsibility of the Foreign Office. Our diplomacy is run by the Foreign Office, but we will be working very closely, as you can imagine, with the new departments for international trade and for the withdrawal from the EU, and they will be borrowing some of our staff as is only proper. But there's a huge opportunity, and I think that the mood here today, I've been very struck by how excited and how positive people here are about the opportunities for Britain. Thanks a lot. See you. Thank you.
So, Boris Johnson there, just hearing while he was speaking, Alan Cairns remains Welsh Secretary, exactly as Vicky Young predicted. Let's return to Joe Tanner, former advisor to Boris Johnson. A couple of things looking at that. He's already talking in a gentler mode. The charming French Foreign Minister's written him a charming letter. Is that's the way forward, is it?
Yeah, and I think the language that Boris can use, his fantastic way of describing things. He speaks several languages. I mean, even most of these people even know who he is. That, very often a foreign secretary would be created here, and most of the other people around the world be scratching their heads wondering who it is.
I'm just going to bounce off you because I know you know all the characters. Karen Bradley going to the DCMS.
Wonderful news. Very, very hard-working, moved on the modern slavery work that Theresa really wanted to see at the Home Office. A very, very good appointment there. Right.
Now, let's talk about Boris, because the other thing, apart from the change into a statesman, if you like, will the hair ever change?
I'd like to think so. It did slightly. I remember taking him for a haircut when we worked on that campaign. But I also remember smoothing that hair down, and just before we'd go on air, he would mess it up. It's his trademark. The reality is he has one of the most incredible brands, and that brand is now going to be used around the world to ensure people know that Great Britain is still open for business and still wants people to come, enjoy everything we have here and beyond. So not a figure of fun, a figure of what? I think he is a statesman. I genuinely believe. I think I remember working with him for that campaign and people telling us he would never win, he would never do a great job. Well, tell me that London fell apart under his time as mayor. He won 2 great victories there and London didn't fall apart. Now, you can have individual criticisms about the trains that didn't run on time on your particular day, but ultimately London still was standing and he left it in a better state than he started there. So I believe actually he has every talent in his belt to go and do a great job.
Jo, thank you very much for joining us.